Hey guys, Youngblood with you for your Summarize the Verse this week, covering Around the Verse from yesterday, June 8th. And boy, this was a big one out of Foundry 42 in the UK. So they're starting off with the air traffic controller sprint, and basically the overall groundwork for that has been completed. And now they're moving towards what happens in the ship, basically communications from the cockpit and how you interact with the station. And it's basically going to start some level of dialogue through cockpit animations and communications. And that's targeting the ship landing and the ship requesting at Port Alizar is basically your first steps. The new player experience is something we talked about last week in regards to a module that's going up on the RSI site, but it's going to actually expand a little bit past that, and it's going to be some things in the game. Now, I'm not sure if you can turn these on or off, or after you see them once, they don't come up again, but basically you're going to be able to get some initial hints that are going to help players learn how to use things like the ATC system or the new MobiGlass that's going to be in place. There are going to be some spawn changes to 3.0. Basically, currently you get spawned into beds based on certain spawn locations, and based on the number of those spawn locations, it's creating a lot of unnecessary fluff within the environment. They're now trying to kind of tie some of those systems together to basically help simplify the process and minimize the flow graphs, which makes things a lot more intuitive and a little bit quicker in the engine. The Mission Manager app is progressing very well as some work towards the mission brokers and how missions are presented to you and how they're then tracked by the player. The AI Locomotion, basically how the AI moves around, currently is set to really move across like set tracks, which ends up making some of the NPCs look unnatural when they walk around corners. They're now going through and making kind of different diffusion techniques that are allowing this to be a lot smoother and a lot more natural, so you're not watching an NPC going, well, that's clearly an NPC based on the way they're walking. It's supposed to be a lot more natural. The takedown animations we talked about a while ago have moved into more of a refining pass. Basically, they're trying to polish the interactions and tying in some of the mocap animations that they have to make things a lot smoother. Facial animations are being polished for Miles Eckhart, so we're obviously seeing a lot of work being done towards him for 3.0. In the VFX world, they're currently working on lightning animations, and this is really being done on more of a smaller scale, kind of focused on interior electrical effects. Particles are also getting some trail work done in collision with objects, so like sparks, for example, can end up shooting off in a direction, leaving a trail, and then bouncing off a wall or the floor. Flames and some other types of visual effects are also getting work done for things like refineries that are going to be placed in locations like Delamar. The Cutlass is now getting its flight-ready animations, including some thruster effects and interior damage. Those have all been completed, so obviously we're getting really close to the new Cutlass rework. The 600i artwork has finished and has been labeled as one sleek ship. So artwork's done. That pretty much means we're getting pretty close to a concept sale there. I would say we're probably looking at that towards the end of this month, but we'll just have to wait and see. And speaking of new ships, they said that they're focused on a new ground vehicle, and it's almost finished. And they're also going to be kicking off some new other ground ship options, so that should be interesting to see. There is a new ship weapon that they're moving forward, actually several of them, but one of them is actually a new laser repeater, and it looks really pretty awesome as far as the design of the weapon. It almost looks like it opens like a pod, kind of like the portal gun. Habitation pods are getting more work and new components. Basically, these are going to be your outposts, the modular places that are going to be on the moons. And these include things like comm arrays, water collectors, and deployable communication units. Now, I see deployable communication units, and I think that may be something that's going to be at these locations, but it might also be almost like a cargo unit that you can end up carrying around in a ground vehicle or your ship, but we'll have to see how that plays out. Space is also getting some work done in the visual category, mainly right now focused on large volumes of space dust. And when you're in the Stanton system, these are going to be things that you're viewing from a long range off. But they're also currently using the Pyro system as a test bed to kind of show these things up a little bit closer up, and they're really nice looking. But the thing that's probably more important there is the fact that they are currently working in another system, and we're getting to see some of that visually in the game engine, and that's really exciting. The truck stop team is kind of working on some of the hues and the gloss variation, and that includes things like wear and tear. They're also kind of refining some of the structural elements of the machinery, and the solar panels are getting them to a place to where they look natural, and kind of getting an idea of where they're going to end up sitting and how they're angled to make sure they make sense with the overall design. The overall whole of the truck stop, those pieces are being worked on right now to make it look modular but not repetitive, and the landing pads are getting more complexity added to some of their geometry. New outposts and lighting work is being done, basically focusing in more on some of the emergency situations to give some of the, I kind of give the overall appearance of like stressful situations. They also did commit to the fact that there's going to be an illegal drug lab, and they said it may or may not be on one of the moons, but I think we can take that and say, okay, there's going to be an illegal drug lab on one of these moons, or maybe it ends up being on Delamar, which is technically an asteroid, and that's how they're kind of playing that game. But speaking of planets and asteroids and moons, the outposts that you're actually going to see there, they are getting work on some of their labels and decals, which are actually being set to dynamically change based on who owns the outpost. And based on the examples that we saw, it really looks like it's more focused on companies than players. So like you may see Covalex on one, or you may see like Aegis on another one. It's whatever company is claiming ownership of that outpost, and that's what you're really going to see there. It's not going to be like, this is STLYoungblood's outpost and my avatar is going to be there. That's not the case. In ships, the Reclaimer has basically completed the work on the drone room. How they're stored, how they're deployed, and kind of how they look when they're in there. The engine room has been completed, and that's actually been reusing some of the assets from the Idris. And they said that anytime items are reused now, it's not like the piecework that we've seen before. They actually get reskinned to fit in better and to look natural. So it's not like there's some random panel that you could tell was ripped off in Idris. The back end of that may be the case, but it's got a different mesh applied to it. The damage model on the ship has actually been improved, and it's actually getting closer to deployment. And that damage model is really meant to expose parts of the ship that are needed based on where it's taken damage and how severe that damage has been. Derelict ships are continuing to see work being done to them. And there's also being support to the missions around them, and they're going to kind of get some different changes to the way they look based on the location of where they've been crashed at. So, you know, you're going to see a different type of wear and tear on the ship if it's been in a snowy environment or a sandy desert environment. It's going to kind of change based on that environment that you're in. The Gladius cockpit has been reworked to help improve the experience in the cockpits. That includes things like Art working on the clearing the channel between the top support screens that basically allow you to see your Gatling gun. They've made it so you actually now have functional buttons that tie into the player interaction system. They've remodeled the throttle to make it a little bit more sense, and they've extended the canopy as well as adding some new lighting in there, basically making the ship look better and be more functional, so the interactions that you're going to have make a lot more sense. We get some new looks at the whole sea. It's looking great. On the exterior of the ship, they're focusing on the landing gear, but on the inside of the ship, the front section of the ship is completed at this point, and they're now going through lighting to make sure that it makes sense with the different damage states and how it reacts. After they finish that pass, they're going to move on to the tunnel through the midsection of the ship and then finish up in the rear. An interesting note as far as Arena Commander is concerned, Dying Star has gotten a bit of a facelift, and there's not any real changes that Art has done. However, they've gotten it to a point to where there's going to be persistent procedurally generated asteroids in place, so it's going to look a little bit different every time you're in there, giving you a little bit more miles out of the game, because it's the same map, but you're going to have to fly it a little bit differently every time. The user interface team is working on new features for the MobiGlass, and the new MobiGlass looks phenomenal. Basically focusing on the home screen and getting that functional, and being able to display things like atmospheric information, your suit status, and your personal overview. And they've also integrated the player personal loadout, so your weapons and attachments and all that kind of stuff is now an app in the MobiGlass, and once that's totally functional, they're going to move that towards the ship, so you can customize what your ship's going to have on it before you actually pull it. Character customization has a nice menu interface that's been created, and it's going to be pretty limited when we first get to that point, but as far as changing your features are concerned, you're going to be able to go through and select it. The interface looks good, and you're going to be able to do that for as many character slots as you have, but that's going to kind of be dependent based on how many packages you have as well. And finally, the audio team has been working hard. And one of the coolest things that they've done is that the terminals that you actually pull ships from and interact with, their audio is going to reflect their overall condition. So if they're new or old or a certain model, they're going to make different sounds. And the one that they actually showed looked like a really old like Drake model. It actually kind of looked like the Battlestar Galactica going back to older technology. The audio is reflective of that. So I think that's some of the things that it's going to allow you to use different senses to get a feel of the type of components you're talking about, but it's exciting to see that they're doing it. As far as the deep dive this week, it was about Item System 2.0 again. If you have interest in that, please watch that section. Otherwise, it's just too much information to cover, and it's not as relevant as a lot of what we just discussed. So, if you guys have questions about any of this, please let me know. Otherwise, it was a great episode. I'm happy to share the information with you. Stay tuned for a lot more content coming soon, and have yourselves a wonderful day. Take care.